William, I will drift a bit, and you spoke about Indian, it's a very strategic part, basically. I will drift a bit, not to the capacity as a leader of Lockheed Martin, but I see you want to contribute in India in the aerospace system. We have been long-term associated with the Indian interest and build up platforms for the Indian military, basically. We are looking for aero engine, very hard, some of the advanced technology we have not been succeeded through DRDO so far. You have also been associated with some of the Indian technology, Indian capability, worldwide, basically. And most important, F-35 has very, very highly recognized and highly collaborative program with Pratt & Whitney, F-135.
Correct.
Can you tell us, how those systems work, basically? How does such collaboration work? And specifically India, how we can reach out to such way when we invite original equipment manufacturer OEMs and they can contribute to us, through various programs. What are the key terms of collaboration as far as these coveted technologies concerned? Your approach to that, please.
Right. I think I mentioned just briefly before on your prior question, it's a team approach, and so it's incredibly important not just to look at Lockheed Martin, but look at our team members that are on these platforms, whether it's the helicopter on offer for the NUH, or the fighter aircraft, or even what we have already in service with the C-130J. So with the foundational agreements that we have in place, we talked about with the Defense Trade Technology Initiative, DTTI, and advancing some projects underneath that. That was intended to help facilitate transfer of technology, collaboration with DRDO, and we're very much interested in doing that. And so when we think about aero engine technology, we think about radar systems. We need to come to the table as the platform integrator with our partners on the radars, on the engines, on the missile systems, so that we start to build those connections. But, we provide missiles as well, and so it's a great example. We're partnered with Barat Dynamics Limited, different application, Javelin, but we're committed to transfer of technology, co-production, so co-development, co-production with Barat Dynamics Limited, Defense Public Sector Unit, and with connections into DRDO. So it's a great example where we see a path towards this cooperation, and we really need to see, I think, more speed and progress with our partners, both with the government of India, the Ministry of Defense, DRDO, and the Defense Public Sector units and with the private sector. And so I think speed is really important now that we've got, the foundations established, both as companies and the agreements government to government. I think that opens the door for us to revisit things we talked about 15 years ago, in working together on aero engine technology. And I'll say the other foundation that's worth mentioning is as I talk about the joint ventures over the last decade, look at the advancements over the last 15 years in the civil aviation sector. India is one of the largest civil markets for aircraft. And so when we start to think about maintenance, repair, and overhaul, MRO, there's truly a synergy between what we would ask, say, our partner on the engines to do that they may already be doing in the civil sector, with what they could leverage over into the defense sector, because you need scale in an MRO to make them viable. And I think the synergy between the defense and the civil domain from an aerospace and defense perspective is significant. Whether it's covered under auspices or not doesn't matter, but the point is it's going to help us make the business case because we see the scale of volume. And there's one other dimension we haven't talked about. We talked about aero engines. We talked about other things. Raw material is also an important technology. It's covered under DAD 2020 now. We've been advocating for a consortium approach, maybe public-private partnership approach to, both the acquisition, the capturing the raw material, processing the raw material, and meeting through testing aerospace and defense grade standards, both civil and of course military defense standards. If we can do that in aerospace grade aluminum and titanium, it'll give a level of self-reliance for India. It'll help us as companies meet the indigenous content, and then collectively achieve the level of efficiency that we've enjoyed, in the production side, translate that down into the material procurement. There's a lot of value there. Now, it takes time. It's an additional ecosystem that needs to be created. But I would submit that we do that together. We do that with a consortium of companies and in partnership with governments and the Indian government, because that's how it's worked in other countries. I can look to the US, right? A lot of that has come up because of public-private partnership recognizing the strategic nature and making them, therefore, the joint investment.
Right. So, William, will you be keen to, say, talk to your partners, say GE Aviation or Pratt and Whitney, to offer such thing to India if, say, F-21 is chosen and selected, to transfer the complete technology to India as far as the engine is concerned, as a whole package of 114 fighter jet aircraft,
Yeah.
So, are you open to such talks with Indian government and
Sure.
of course in the Air Force?
Well, we work with our partners every day, right? Because they're integral to the systems and the platforms that we're delivering. Of course, we would work with on a government-to-government basis if it's based on licensing. We would work through the U.S. government directly, and of course, the Tier 1 partners of ours would have to do the same. So yes, I think the interest is there. The opportunity is clearly there in terms of the requirements, and so I point to you mentioned the F-21, but the helicopters are a tremendous requirement. I think some of the incentivization that's there, the strategic partner model, working with the private sector for the NUH requirement that is emerging, is incredibly important. That is going to actually also accelerate the aerospace and defense ecosystem. And so when we talk about an NUH platform, think about the opportunity to have exclusive production for a platform that would meet not just the defense requirement, but also the commercial requirements. India is probably one of the largest untapped markets from a civil helicopter perspective. That's a tremendous opportunity for companies like us to partner with Indian companies to meet that need. And so I think it's the platform, it's the systems, it's the licensing that we would seek through our government to really meet that challenge and deliver the capabilities.
We already, I understand, built up, a joint venture to bring Indian defense company into the global supply chain of yours. For example, for F-16. I recently understand U.S. government had awarded a $62 billion contract under indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, a fixed price incentive contract for production of F-16 military cell over the next 10 years. Is it also a good news for Indian industry in broadening the scale and the skills? Some of them, say Tata is already working with you on F-16 wings. So how do you see such things?
Yeah.
Good news for Indian industry.
Yeah, I think it's good news for everybody. I think as these investments are made and extending the capabilities and the life of major platforms, I mentioned earlier, it's a $165 billion ecosystem from a fighter ecosystem that's sustaining. But what I'll lead off with is it's about jobs. It's actually about skills and jobs. And so with the MH-60 Romeo acquisition earlier this year, that basically sustained a production line. It's sustained the most capable platform in its class, and we can offer it to India, but also offer it to other countries. It creates jobs in India because we're able to, whether it's through offsets or just proactive investments that we've already made from a foreign direct investment perspective, it allows us to scale up our operations in India. So it allows us to sustain our operations in the U.S. and jobs in the U.S., but it also allows us to be competitive globally. It increases the size of the pie, right? Because now you're bringing in international as well as the U.S. Requirements and doing that at scale. And so I mentioned earlier, we've trained over 1,500 people in India. I see us growing that significantly, exponentially going forward under an F-21 requirement, and really growing the skills and capabilities in India, while also sustaining the operations that we have in the U.S. and then also being part of a global ecosystem. We say it's for India, from India, but it's really being part of a global ecosystem. We've got 240 suppliers of all sizes feeding into the joint venture, but we have over 70 that feed directly into our Lockheed Martin global supply chain. And I see that growing exponentially going forward as we can deliver to meet these requirements. And it's about capabilities of people on the ground that are sustaining those platforms going forward. So we have field service engineers all around India. I see that growing. Building a maintenance, repair, and overhaul capability I talked about earlier in India for India, but also to fulfill requirements regionally that have operating, similar aircraft and systems. You think about the C-130J, the fighters, the helicopters. I believe India could be a hub for that level of capability, and that is very much in line with the self-reliant India initiative, meet India's requirements, but also.
So how much is the Indian aerospace company, William? How much is the Indian aerospace company is contributing in your global supply chain, and with such program coming, say F-16 in the global scale for 1 decade, what would be the future projection, which you think is coming out of the India in terms of?
Well, I mean, look at the
figure.
Sure. Look at over the last decade, we've the Indian companies that we're working with, not just joint venture partners, but the overall ecosystem, has generated over $600 million worth of exports over the last 10 years. That's a huge number. And if you look at that in the context of now project forward towards a 5 billion target by 2025 that I've heard referenced from the Ministry of Defense as a target exports going forward, I think the F-21 and what we're doing in those joint ventures right now, and say the fighter wing production that we're just underway and developing, and building on what we're doing already, the MRFA requirement and the NUH requirement, NMRH, all of these are going to translate to us establishing even more capability in India to meet the Indian requirement and position to accelerate those exports. So I see, a tremendous growth in exports, that potential building on these requirements, from 2025 to 2030. So I think it's incredibly important to look at those companies and those countries that have made the investments. The foundation is there. Therefore, we're much more able to meet the exponential growth and requirements that are being asked for by 2025. And as U.S. companies, I think we're over the last 4 or 5 years meeting about 22% of the aerospace and defense exports from India. 22% are going to the U.S. So I think a large part of that is what we're delivering as part of Lockheed Martin, and having these partners, large, medium, small startups feeding into our aerospace and defense ecosystem globally, and it's a great partnership. So I think that's the opportunity. I think, again, it's foundation. Translate that to the future. You can project forward to 2025 and 2030 and see what opportunity that really presents, not just to meet Indian requirements, but to be part of the global network.
William, you have been in India for a long time and you have been watching. Let's talk about the defense policies. You have been seeing the evolution of what we call earlier DPP, and now it's called DAP, Defense Acquisition Procedure 2020 is finally out. It is again a 700 big giant like you. What is the change you see, and how does it suit OME like you in terms of scaling up business in India? This is a broad question to you. Of course, you had a situation in way back regarding the offset obligation discharge. Basically, there was still some clarity, and offset there has been some major change, and offset banking has been taken off. How will this all policy will affect you? Can you talk about some of the points as a leading OEMs and some of the things you want still to change?
Sure. So under the DPP, we've been fulfilling our offset obligations. We really tried to stay out in front of that. If you look at our investment that we've made, the foreign direct investment and the exports, the $600 million worth of exports, the additional $200 million worth of revenue that's generated through Indian companies that we're associated with, it's been huge. And the amount of offset fulfillment that came from that is a very, very small percentage, because it's relatively challenging to get some of those projects approved. So we've done more traditional supply chain to meet offsets historically, and so I just want to give you that frame of reference. But we're committed to meet those requirements. We We've actually been successful with the offset banking model under the prior DPPs. And now under the DAP 2020, there's a lot of opportunities and some challenges that come with it for foreign OEMs such as ourselves. One, it drives to a higher indigenous content, 50%. So we're going to have to work together with the Indian government, as well as our suppliers and our partners to make sure that we're able to meet that level of indigenization when we look at some of these near-term platform requirements and systems, because of course the services want to have the most advanced platform and systems, and so we need to accelerate that engagement in the Indian industry. Leasing's been added as a model to the DAP now for the first time. That's a tremendous opportunity for the Indian government to accelerate induction of capability, maybe fly before you buy, and also find maybe a more efficient mechanism under a very budget-constrained environment where you can trade off the capital investment versus the operating budget. So I think that's offering tremendous promise and opportunity. Of course, implementation is a challenge. We'll need to see some really good cases go through. Adding lifecycle costs into the L1 evaluations, so allowing for performance-based logistics, long-term service and support agreements, that's a win-win. It's going to, I think, help us be more competitive, make our best offer, and know that the government of India is getting the best capability. There's other provisions in there for incentivization. The strategic partner model remains to elevate the private sector while maintaining the defense public sector units. I think those are all really positive developments. There are some regressive forms in terms of reducing the multiplier. It's basically a 0.5 multiplier on components. Unfortunately, that's going to have a real impact on the MSME. That's going to have an adverse impact on suppliers we've been working with for, over the last 30 years, but very largely over the last 10, 15 years. It's going to cause us to have to look differently at how do we meet our offset obligations. Of course, they're looking at single vendor foreign military sales, GDP, no longer requiring offsets, but regardless, we're going to have the indigenization as part of a lot of our government offerings. So whether it's offsets or indigenous content, I think the value remains there. The challenge remains there to accelerate that transformation. So I think in the end, ultimately it's the implementation. It's not just policy, but it's the implementation that's really incredibly important.
William, just to interrupt you, what is challenging in building a aerospace ecosystem? Basically, of course, there are tier one company like you, which is always there in India, building up. But the challenge is more about building ancillary, MSMEs, companies in defense, bring around them, create
Right.
parts, subparts, and all that. Offset banking has been one of such tools. I understand that. Will it not affect, how did it work in US aerospace system? This is the one way which you can really give order to some of those companies, encourage them to be part of the system, invest more, innovate more, and supply you. Tell us more about
Sure.
such
I was
policy.
I was here in the formative phase of the first defense procurement procedure in 2005-6 timeframe, and we were advocating for offset banking. Ultimately, it was implemented later in one of the later DPPs, and we were making the case based on best practices around the globe, where offset banking would allow us to make advancements in advance of requirement and actually accelerate the development of suppliers. I would say it's been challenging to get those projects approved, and so it didn't necessarily maybe achieve the desired outcome. If it doesn't allow for speed and simplicity for us to propose projects, get them approved, implement, it makes it difficult for us to really translate that into the real value that I think the then current DPP was aspiring for. But we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars, and some of it we are seeing value through offset banking, some not. That's okay. But it's been, I think it's achieved the desired effect, and now projecting forward, we still have obligations we need to meet, and so we can still utilize offset banking on some of the earlier obligations, but you're going to see that have less of an impact. Now it's all about foreign direct investment. And so I think it's going to be important. What's the ease of doing business and implementation for companies like us, Lockheed Martin, to increase our foreign direct investment, on the foundation that's already been set. So I think offset banking was an enabler, but it's not the only one. It's unfortunate, I think, for us. I think we saw some value we achieved even most recently over the last 1 to 2 years. So I think it was taking time to see that value. I understand, the Ministry of Defense has decided to move away from that model, but as we raise indigenous content, we're going to have to look at other avenues for incentivization, if you will. How do you offsets ultimately and multipliers and banking is ultimately trying to incentivize companies to make early and often investments that's going to help accelerate the transfer of technology and the growth in the Indian aerospace and defense ecosystem. So we're fully committed to that. Getting transfer of technology, projects approved, now having a project management office to help facilitate that, say with the likes of DRDO. Hopefully that has an effect, because speed, I think, is the component that at times has been missing for us to deliver, maximum capability, maximum outcomes as per the DPEP and now DAP.
So same on the offset platform, and Indian Navy is acquiring one of your key multirole helicopter, MH Romeo, and of course, how do you see offset unfolding, in such scenario and post DAP 2020? What is the way out for your offset discharge under such?
Well, MH-60 Romeo was acquired under the prior DPP, right? So we have the full offset requirement. We've already submitted project proposals. We have a very strong and robust plan to meet our offset obligation early and actually make sure we're delivering values. I'm very confident that we're going to achieve that. But we also can point to what's being produced already in our joint venture. The Tata Sikorsky Aerospace Limited Venture, TSAL, down in Hyderabad is already delivering huge capability for helicopters as well as aircraft engines. So we may not be getting offset credit for that, but it's already translating to, I'll say, thousands of jobs when you count the 240 suppliers that feed into it. Probably tens of thousands of jobs in India are already feeding through that joint venture. And so that's part of how we're going to meet our obligation as it relates to the MH-60 Romeo and how we would position to win for the upcoming naval helicopter requirements as well.
William, now let's broaden a bit and give us, our viewers, a bigger perspective of Lockheed Martin. Like apart from fighter jets, you see the modern times, the UAV, what we call, is much more important. It can hit you anywhere without harming the human being inside there, because you don't need that. What is the latest from Lockheed Martin, and what can you offer to India as far as UAVs are concerned? Which Indian Armed Forces is scouting, of course, worldwide for the best of the technology. Could you talk about such technology from the house of Lockheed Martin as far as UAV is concerned?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Unmanned air systems are the future, and in collaboration with the manned capabilities as well. We've, as Lockheed Martin, we've had a storied legacy of designing and developing highly capable unmanned aerial systems. We understand there are a number of unmanned vehicles currently being developed in India, and in partnership with the U.S. government, we welcome the opportunity to explore future collaborations on unmanned systems should formal opportunities and requirements arise. I think it's important. You asked earlier about the foundational agreements. Now with the BECA being signed, I think that brings a lot more capability for the unmanned air systems to take full advantage. And there's another component that I think we're very much a part of. What we're talking about really is the 21st century warfighting capability going forward, and unmanned air systems are going to be very much a part of that. And so we're very interested to work with Indian companies and even U.S. companies with large-scale operations in India on artificial intelligence, quantum computing, machine learning. These are the building blocks, really the key elements that allow unmanned systems to be effective, reliable, and truly capable. And so I think that's the other dimension, is back to, we talked about university and R&D cooperation. I think there's opportunities on that front when we start to think about how can unmanned air systems be developed in India, for India, to really tap into the innovation hub that exists both in Bangalore and Hyderabad, but really across the nation. India is at the forefront of a lot of these technologies in the commercial domain. We'd love to partner with companies to see how we transition and translate that into capabilities in the aerospace and defense domain as well. So I think there's tremendous opportunities, both with our legacy of of creating incredible capabilities in the unmanned air system spaces. But what can we create then going forward? I think we see a lot of opportunities to collaborate here in India.
William, you have a very strong, aerospace background, very strong technology background. Basically, you have studied, with a top institution, and also you have worked globally. So you understand the geopolitical situation is changing, the rules of warfare is changing, and so the weapons are changing. Basically, is it very important to talk about, for India specific, what we're buying, we must see at least 10 or 15 years down the line, basically. As far as the fighter jets are concerned, we are seeing the evolution of direct energy, something you don't need to have a big hardware or a big weapon platform. Energy will emit and will do sufficient jobs in terms of loaded 10, 15 missiles. How workable you see such a future project, is available within the world, especially for India, and what Lockheed Martin is doing specific to direct energy technology and such things? Could you give our viewers such background?
Sure. Yeah. I think it's a broad question, but you're specifically talking about directed energy as well. I think broadly, it's about precision and efficiency of delivering results, right? And so we're already seeing that being incorporated into systems, whether it's at the platform level, with the radars, with the missile systems that are on those platforms. It's all about precision, reliability, and efficiency of delivering capability on target reliably. Directed energy is a great example. Lockheed Martin is leveraging decades of experience to develop scalable directed energy solutions for military aircraft and other systems. We're actually working across all of our business areas in Lockheed Martin, and our integrated systems complement the kinetic solutions that we have already in place to protect warfighters. And so, it's kind of like another arrow in the quiver, right? You have your traditional systems and you have multiple missile systems. How can you complement that with directed energy systems that allows you to select what's needed, in terms of capability and targeting, and as well as delivering an effect? And directed energy is now a part of that. In partnership with the U.S. government, we continue to mature these technologies, critical technologies, and invest in the future. We see those technologies being developed for multiple domains. So we have a lot of progress on a sea-based platform capability. We look at those for air, land, and sea capabilities that are critical. And I think you're seeing those first implemented in actually very effectively countering the unmanned air systems drone attacks that are somewhat of an asymmetric warfare capability that we need to have a more efficient capability to intercede and counter those threats. So yes, Lockheed Martin is investing across our business areas. We're proving those capabilities, rapid capability development and introduction through some of the U.S. Requirements with the services. And then we would, of course, work with the U.S. government to see how we can mature that technology and see how that translates to capabilities to all of our customers, even beyond the U.S.
So in future, you see, instead of having a big fighter jet of such a costly proposition, will replace much cheaper UAVs, which will do the equal job and can go as far as fighter aircraft can go. Do you see such thing happening very soon? For example, in the Army, you see the tanks, the evolution has somehow been stagnant. There's no more tank brigades required as such, basically. Back to Air Force, does it apply the same equation?
I don't know. I think it's going to be a hybrid system, right? There's going to be incredibly capable, I'll just say, legacy platforms that continue to operate and meet the mission requirements, and then you're going to build on that with more advanced capabilities to extend the mission capability. So I see it as a complementary type of solution in any domain, air, land, sea, and even in space domain. In terms of legacy systems complemented by the most advanced systems capabilities. What's going to become important is how do you integrate across that, right? How do you have mission solutions that talk to each other, in terms of a 21st century warfighting capability? That's where the game-changing capability is going to be. The speed the speed of decision making and removing latency in the system and getting greater speed with greater reliability. That's going to be really important as we start to develop and then induct these more advanced systems. But I don't think it replaces. I think it complements and extends a lot of the legacy systems that are the foundation of the security and defense framework around the world.
William, before we conclude now, my last question to you was rightly on the geopolitical front. Recently, it was reported that Lockheed Martin would be banned by China over their support to Taiwan for their already existing F-16 program. How does it affect you? And how do you see such a global situation impact on you?
Well, I can't really comment on that. That's more of a government-to-government discussion. There's some history that needs to be considered and what the specific situation is. But for us, in the context of doing business here in India, we enjoy a very strong bipartisan support out of the U.S. For India in terms of what we, are aspiring to deliver. And so I can focus on, what we're committed to support here. I can't really comment on other geopolitical factors that are truly more of a government-to-government discussion. But appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much. So William Blair, Vice President, Lockheed Martin, thank you so much for such a comprehensive talk with us. With Businessworld, Manish Kumar Jha. Thank you, William. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Being with us.
Appreciate it. Great to see you again. Thanks.
Thank you.